So this morning, it's looking more and more likely that the race for North Carolina's 9th congressional district could be headed for a redo. The Democratic candidate, Dan McCready, is now withdrawing his concession to Republican Mark Harris, as multiple criminal investigations are happening about a political operative working for the Harris campaign being accused of hiring workers to illegally gather up absentee ballots from voters.
Over the last week, we have seen the criminal activity come to light, and we have seen that my opponent, Mark Harris, has bankrolled this criminal activity. And so as of today, I am withdrawing my concession to Mark Harris. And furthermore, I call on Mark Harris to tell the American people exactly what he knew and when he knew it.
Should note, NBC News has retracted its call of the race for Harris because of all this. NBC's Katie Beck is in Bladen County, North Carolina, the epicenter of this discussion. Katie, what are you hearing?
Well, good morning, Hallie. What else do we know about this political operative? Well, he has a fraud conviction himself, and this isn't the first time he's been under the microscope for his collecting of absentee ballots, not even in this county, in Bladen County. We know that his activity collecting those ballots goes back to 2010. Now the State Board of Elections has voted twice to not certify this election, doing a deep dive investigation into just how many of these absentee ballots were collected by this operative and his associates, possibly tampered with or thrown out, and whether or not there needs to be a new election.
A young lady came to the door.
Datisha Montgomery recalls knock at the door in October, a woman there to collect her absentee ballot.
I signed it, gave it to her. It was not sealed.
And it was never turned in. Investigators now collecting accounts like hers, digging deeper into what could be an organized effort to illegally collect absentee ballots. In the state of North Carolina, it's illegal for anyone other than a close relative or the postman to collect an absentee ballot. But neighbors here say when they got a knock on the door, they handed theirs over, assuming it was just part of the process.
And investigators coming to my house, then it really struck me.
At the center of the probe, allegations about the operations of longtime Republican consultant McCrae Dallas to collect them, who worked for the Republican Mark Harris in the 2018 election. Harris won by 905 votes, but even before his victory, irregularities had surfaced, along with concerns that absentee ballots could be tampered with and counted or thrown out.
We're hearing more and more each day that I think the question of is this election tainted is becoming much more apparent.
The State Board of Elections released a document indicating Dallas and an associate turned in 775 absentee ballot applications where Montgomery lives in Bladen County. There, 61% of absentee ballots were cast for Harris, but only 19% of them were cast by registered Republicans. No comment yet from Dallas, and the Harris campaign hasn't responded to multiple requests for comments.
I withdraw my concession to Mark Harris.
But Democrat Dan McCready is speaking out, withdrawing his concession in the race, citing shameful criminal activity that's come to light and calling on his opponent for answers.
I call on Mark Harris to tell us exactly what he knew and when he knew it.
As for Montgomery, she's learned her lesson.
I know next time to go in person and vote.
Now, the State Board of Elections is trying to be as transparent as they can be in this investigation. They are actually posting online a lot of what they are finding in real time when it comes to these ballots. They are also vowing to have a hearing within the next 2 weeks to air a lot of this evidence publicly and to see what people are thinking about the possibility of a new election. Is there any integrity in how this election was conducted, given what we know now? So as more evidence comes to light, Hallie, day by day, the talk of a new election is becoming more real.
NBC's Katie Beck live for us there in Bladen County. Katie, thank you. Great to see you. New reporting from the Washington Post on this today shows that there were early warning signs of weird irregularities in North Carolina and that Republicans in the state were flagged about it. In the days after the primary election back in May, aides to the guy who was defeated on the Republican side, Congressman Robert Pittenger, told Republican officials they suspected something was up in this exact county, Bladen County. They say their concerns were ignored. The executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party, Dallas Woodhouse, says the complaint did not register at the time and describes Harris as an innocent victim there. Black guy Dallas Woodhouse is joining me now from Raleigh, North Carolina. Dallas, thanks for being on the show. I know it's been a roller coaster few days, few weeks for you. And let me start with what your comments were to not just the paper, but to my colleague Chris Hayes overnight. And let me get you on the record on this. Do you or do you not support a new round of voting to put aside any questions once and for all about this race?
Well, we don't yet. We may very well be headed for that. The media has done a tremendous public service in exposing and, just incredible political corruption that has gone on back over a decade in this area of the state, something that has got to be rooted out. But as good as those media reports are, we have to let the State Board of Elections come forward with a determination of whether this race could have been overturned or there was a substantial likelihood of it being overturned before we make the determination of a new election. If they reach that standard, we will absolutely support a new election. We think it's probably going to take them some more time. I just want to add in.
Well, can I just clarify one thing, Dallas, real quick, though, on what you just said? And I don't want to make sure I'm understanding you crystal clear here. You're saying that the State Board of Elections would have to show that whatever irregularities happened, whatever sketchy stuff happened, had to exceed the 905 vote threshold. Is that what you're saying, that you want to see proof that this actually would have changed the outcome? Is that your standard?
I don't think you can say 905. I think the traditional legal standard in North Carolina has been that there is a substantial likelihood that it could. So I think you have to get in the neighborhood. I mean, and we may very well be getting there. We just have to see the facts from the Board of Elections.
But I guess I'm wondering, what else do you really need to see here, Dallas? Do you really feel comfortable that Mr. Harris can go and sit as a member of Congress with all of these questions about how he got there? Doesn't that delegitimize him, in your view?
I just think that we are obligated in the position we are, as bad as all this looks, and nobody is more horrified by this than us. I mean, we didn't have anything to do with absentee ballot operations. We didn't condone it, fund it. We are disgusted by this. But we are obligated to wait to let the state investigators point out what they know before we take the next step.
Yeah. If in fact, Dallas, and you say you are horrified and you are disgusted, and I have no reason to doubt you on that, but why weren't you horrified and disgusted when Robert Pittenger came to you months ago and raised these same concerns about this same guy?
Fair question. Mr. Pittenger didn't come to me. We did hear some things, I think, from his campaign staff in the days after an election. You know, the party, I'm not excusing this, but in the days after a primary, we often, which we are prevented from being a part of, we often hear complaints about people about how things turned out, and we listen, but it just doesn't quite register. Let me just add 2 things.
Do you regret not having let that register, Dallas? I mean, do you have some regrets on how this process played out, given where we are right now?
Hallie, we all have regrets, tremendous regrets. What I would say is I think there has been a systematic failure going back over a decade. There have been 5 investigations, 3 governors, 1 Republican, 2 Democrats, multiple boards of elections, multiple state, federal, local prosecutors that have failed to get a handle on this. The only way we're going to get a handle on this is because the media has finally exposed it. There has been a tremendous systematic failure across the state of North Carolina, and we may be a part of that. But we'd also like to be part of the solution.
Dallas
Look, let me just add one thing,
gotta leave it there
Hallie.
for you,
I really want to say
real quick
one thing.
Go ahead.
Good Republican and Democrat activists that believe in policy outcomes don't do this. These people in Bladen County were hired guns. They don't care about who wins. They don't care about loses. They don't care about education or tax
hired by the
policy.
Republican candidate, even despite some of these questions about this person's sketchy past in the past. So, you know, that plays into this as well.
But volunteers don't do this.
Okay.
Political mercenaries do it.